Let's begin with the face, one of the faces of Canadian soccer, and that, of course, is Alphonso Davies. So accomplished on the pitch. What a few years he's been having for himself. But I think what makes it so easy to be a fan of his is that we know he's a good guy. Case in point, it was also announced that he is the ambassador, the Goodwill ambassador for the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. He becomes the first soccer player, first Canadian to hold that position. We know his history, born in a refugee camp and moved to Canada at the age of 5. And then the rest is history as far as his professional career. But Ollie, does it impress you that, you know, what he's accomplished both on and off the pitch, he's done so at just the tender age of 20?
Yeah, not sure what I was doing when I was 20, but it wasn't this. But like you said, Davies
like 2 years ago.
Davies has just got this kind of he's got this humility about him and this kind of down-to-earth nature about him, and that's a credit to, you know, his family and how he's been brought up, and also I think having the right people around him, which he still does, and keeps that kind of small circle. But it's an interesting story. Obviously, it's an incredible story, the way he's risen to be who he is today. But Davies himself has said that he doesn't really remember being a refugee. He doesn't remember that time in his life. He moved to Canada when he was 5. And it was only when the Vancouver Whitecaps put a video out to celebrate him gaining Canadian citizenship that he actually heard his parents tell that story for the first time. So it's not really something that is necessarily kind of front of his mind or until he kind of learned that story was necessarily a part of who he was, but it's certainly become a key part of who he was. And I think that makes it even more impressive that he's kind of realized that and is cognizant of that and knows the kind of change he can affect and the kind of impact he can have by telling that story and inspiring other people around the world. So in terms of being, you know, an ambassador, not just for this initiative, for the national team, but just for this country as a whole, you really couldn't ask for much of a better one when you think about how many Canadians have had, you know, parents, grandparents who have come from other parts of the world, who have made sacrifices to be here. You think about how many players on the men's national team have that kind of background, and then the power of bringing those people together and being a team and showing what, you know, they can accomplish as individuals and collectively. It's pretty inspiring stuff. And yeah, he's an incredible individual and is doing incredible things for his age.
This is the dream Canadian story. This is what the Canadian experience is all about, right? So, Andy, I just want to harken back to December when I think us three and a lot of other people within the soccer community were trying to wax poetic about Alphonso Davies, not even laying it on thick, just being honest about the type of person he was and is, both on and off the field, when it came to the Lou Marsh voting. And this is why it mattered. We understood that there was a doctor in the running, but we understand Alphonso Davies' backstory and what it's taken for him to get to this point, heights that no Canadian footballers ever reached before. It's just a heartwarming story. And what I hope through all of this is that the Canadian public at large understands what a special athlete that we have representing this country at present time.
Yeah, great guy, but let's talk about the athlete now. And it almost, with everything that he's accomplished with Bayern, it almost seems kind of ridiculous for me to say, what does he have to prove or what's at stake at these World Cup qualifiers? But really, what is at stake for him, Gareth, with these qualifiers?
It's that much more special when you do it for your country, right? And that's what this opportunity is all about. Alphonso Davies, has 17 caps for country, and none since 2019 for obvious pandemic reasons. But now he's reaching his, really the type of player that he can become. I think even 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, he was still emerging, he was still growing, he was still finding himself as a footballer. Now he's so much more of a complete player. So what's on the line? Putting the entire country on notice that he has arrived, that he is ready to lead this country forward, potentially to the World Cup in 2022. I think the expectations are higher, Andy. I think that his own expectations have heightened that much as well. So I think that just an improved player, now with a run of games here in this calendar year, this could be a time where the Alphonso Davies Canadian national team story really comes alive.
His success, his rise to fame has been with him at left back, obviously with Bayern. Ollie, is there a risk at playing him in an attacking role with Canada?
I wouldn't say it's a risk because he's just a really good player, right? Wherever you put him, I think he's going to find a way to impact the game. And certainly against opponents like we've got this week, you would be confident any position he plays, he's going to have a meaningful impact. I just think when you talk about how do you get the best out of Alphonso Davies and how do you create the best possible Canadian team, as I've always said, I think against these lower ranked opponents, when you're facing teams that are going to be very deep, very compact in that low block, I think he is better suited to playing left back against those kinds of players because a left back in these kinds of games is a winger anyway, and you need, when you're trying to break down a low block, you need movement, you need to create overloads, you need to have runners from deep, you need unpredictability. I think Alphonso Davies gives you that if he's able to start in a deeper position than he does if he's stuck up the field where there's no space. There's, he's constantly crowded by opponents, and I think life would be a lot more difficult for him in certain circumstances against opponents like these if he is higher up the pitch. So that's my view of it. We'll see what John Herdman comes up with. But yeah, Bayern Munich play him in that position for a reason, and it's because they're in a lot of games like Canada's going to be in this week where they dominate games. They have to break down very defensively minded opponents, and Davies, I think, offers a lot as a fullback in that kind of scenario.
What other team in world football? What other team in world football is their best player playing left back? You want him to be the focal point of the attack, not a player that overlaps on the wing. Give your head a shake, Ollie. That's garbage. Nonsense.
By the way, I just want you to know, Gareth was not supposed to respond to that one. We gave him the floor a little bit.